show you how to sew together your sandy dress. So before you're ready to start this video tutorial, make sure that you've worked through the steps in the information pack, because that will show you how to print your pages, how to assemble them together to reveal your pattern. There's a size chart so you can find which size and cut to your size, and then it will also show you how to cut your pieces in fabric and the layout of the pieces. So hopefully you've done that before you're here. If you haven't, then go and do that, and then you will be ready to start this video. So if you've done that, then the pieces that you should now have are 2 pieces of fusing, one for your back neckline and then one for your front neckline, and then also the matching pattern pieces, so your back neck and your front facing. And then you will have your front piece, which has been cut on the fold, so that produces one mirrored front piece. Your back piece, again, that's been cut on the fold, so you will have one back piece. 2 sleeves, which have been cut mirrored. So the best way to do this is fold your fabric and then cut it, and you will be left with one pair that is the opposite of each other. And then 2 skirt pieces, so a front and a back. So hopefully they are all the pieces that you have. And then the other things that you'll need for this tutorial is some elastic, which is 0.5 centimeters wide, some pins, some scissors, and a safety pin so that you can put your elastic through your channel. If you don't have a safety pin, then the second best option is one of these curb grip or bobby pin, whatever you call it. So now you have all your pieces. The first step that we are going to do is take your facing pieces, your front and back facing, and using your iron, we're going to stick them together. So before you iron this on, it's really important to make sure that you're putting your fusing or interfacing onto the wrong side of your fabric, so the reverse of your fabric. So make sure that you're doing that. And then with your fusing, the side that is the sticky side is the side that's got a little bit of texture to it, that's the glue. So put that side down against your fabric, and then use your iron to attach them both together. Next, we're going to join the shoulder seams of your facing pieces. So with the right sides together, just pin them together at the shoulder seam. And then we can do the same for your front and back pieces. So again, make sure that you are joining the right sides together. So this is the right side facing me, and then this is the right side facing down, so they're facing each other. And again, just join the shoulder seam. And then you can also go ahead and join the side seams of the front and back pieces.
And then the same for the opposite side.
So now we're ready to go ahead and stitch, 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 stitch your shoulder and your side seams of your front and back piece, and then also the shoulder seams of your front and back facing pieces. So next we're going to overlock all of the seam allowance of the seams that we've just sewn on the front and back piece. So the shoulder seam and the side seam. And then for your front and back facing, you're going to overlock the shoulder seams again, and then we're going to overlock round the entire outside edge. And when you're overlocking around the outside edge, with these shoulder seams, make sure that the seam allowance is pushed towards the back neck facing. So these are going upwards towards the back neck facing. And I forgot to mention, if you don't have an overlocker, then you can just use a zigzag stitch on your machine, which will just help to stop the material fraying. Now with your iron, we're just going to press the seams nice and neatly. So again, these are pressed towards the back neck facing. And then we'll press the seams of your front and back front and back bodice pieces. And again, make sure the seam allowances are always pressed towards the back piece. Now we're going to join our front piece with our front facings. So take your front bodice piece and then lie it so that it's the right way round. And then we're going to take your facing pieces, and again with the right sides facing, pin them together. I like to match up the main parts first, so the center front, the shoulder seams, and then the center back notch. And then we're going to take this to our machine, and then we're going to stitch all the way around here with the 1 centimeter seam allowance. When you get to this point here of your center front, I like to just put a little marking, either with a pen or you can just mark it with a pin, like 1 centimeter. So you know when you're coming at this angle, this is where you can stop and then pivot to go up the other side of your neckline. So at this point, I always lift up my foot, and then you can then rearrange your fabric to then go to sew back up to the other side. Next, we're going to add notches into your neckline, and this is going to allow the curves to sit nice and neatly once you put the facing inside. So to do that, all the way around the neckline, and especially where there's a more extreme curve, so for example on this back neckline and then towards this center front point here, we're going to be adding lots of little notches. And to do that, all we do is just cut in and get as close to the seam allowance as you can, the stitch line as you can, without actually cutting through it. So we're going to do that all the way around now.
When it comes to the shoulder seam like this, if there's any extra, I just kind of like to cut a little bit off, and it just removes a little bit of the bulk.
And then the final step to this part is to open up your center front point here so that it will sit nicely. So what we're going to do is really carefully cut in, like as close as you can get to this center point here. And then that kind of frees it so that when you turn it through, it can sit in a nice point like that. The next step is to understitch your neckline. So to do that, what we're going to do is, working from this top side of the facing, we're going to stitch right next to this seam and make sure that we're catching the seam allowance here in to the side of the facing. So the seam allowance should be sitting underneath this facing rather than sitting out on the side of the front piece. So get it in your machine ready, and then just make sure, check underneath here and make sure, let's see if you can see that, the seam allowance is sitting towards this side with the facing. And then we're just going to stitch about 2 millimeters away from this stitch line. And then when it comes to this center front point here, I like to stop just before, so around 1 centimeter before, and then start again around 1 centimeter afterwards. So this is how your stitching will look along your facing and neckline now. So now we can just fold the facing to the inside and give that a press. And then the final thing that I like to do to this neckline and facing is where your shoulder seam is here. I like to make sure that the facing shoulder seam and the outer layer shoulder seam is nice and aligned. And then with your sewing machine, just do a tiny little stitch into the ditch here, I'm not on camera, into the ditch here, and then that will make sure that the facing and the shoulder and the outer layer shoulder seams are always sitting nicely together. It just needs to be just a couple of stitches here. Sorry, I completely forgot to mention these at the start of the video. You should also have 4 pocket bags. So now what we're going to do with the overlocker or with the zigzag machine, you're going to overlock around the entire outside of each pocket bag for all 4. And then with your front and back skirt pieces, you're also going to overlock down the side seam of each one individually. Next we're going to add our pocket bags. So with your front or back skirt, lie it so that your right side is facing up, and then where your notches were before, hopefully you can still see them even though you've overlocked this edge, but if not, just bring your pattern piece again and remark where your notches were. And then we're just going to line up the top of the pattern of the pocket bag with the first notch here. And then pin that in place. And then the same for the other side. And then repeat for the other skirt. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do a stitch line along the pocket bag side seam here, and we're going to do it just inside 1 centimetre, so around 0.8 centimetres, and just stitch from the top to the bottom. And then next, flip this pocket bag outwards and make sure that the seam allowance is also still sitting outwards, and then just very carefully edge stitch next to this seam that you've just sewn now. So this is what you will be left with after you've attached your pocket bag to that side seam, and then you've just got a neat little stitch along here. And we're just going to repeat that for the other side, and then also the 2 pocket bags on the other skirt. Next, it's time to join your front and back skirt. So I just do these big parts on the floor so I can lay them all out nice and flat. So with the first piece, lay it down with the right side facing you, and then take your other piece, and then we're just going to lay it on top and just match up the side seams and the pocket bags and just pin them together. Sorry, that's the wrong way around. Make sure that the right side's facing each other. And now we're going to stitch the side seam, but how we're going to do it is we're going to stitch down first of all, and then come just past where this pocket bag attaches, and then we're going to pivot, and then we're going to stitch all the way around this pocket bag, back to this side seam again, and then to the hem. So we're going to do that all in one stitch. So at this point here, I've stitched to just after the pocket bag is attached. I'm going to keep my needle down, lift my foot up, and then rotate, so then I can stitch now all the way around my pocket bag. And again, once you've come back to this other side then and past that original stitch line that you did, you can lift your foot up again and then rotate. Just make sure that your seam allowances are all sitting nice and neat, and then stitch down to your hem. And then repeat for the other side. And then next we're just going to press the side seams. And then I just like to come onto the right side of the fabric also and just give the pocket bag openings just an extra press so they're nice and tidy. So now you have your skirt section complete, and then your top section complete also. So now we need to join these together. So how we're going to do that is we're going to take them with right sides together and just match the center front notch the side seam and then just arrange this in a way that you're able to get round. I put them inside each other. Your center back notch, and then your other side seam. and then you can just go around and add a few more pins. And then we're going to stitch all the way around, but this time we're going to use a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. So all the way through until now we've been using 1 centimeter, but for this we're going to stitch with a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. And then go ahead and overlock all the way around also. So next what we're going to do is we're going to press this seam allowance upwards, and then we're going to stitch it with the 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then that's what's going to create our tunnel for us to put our elastic through to create the gathering. So we're just going to press it upwards all the way around now. And now we're going to take this back to our sewing machine and then just do a 1 centimeter stitch all the way, but we're going to leave around a 2 to 3 centimeter gap before we finish the stitching. So I'll show you when we're sewing. So if you are a complete beginner, you might want to pin this also. So as you're going around, it's pinned, so you can ensure that you're staying on track. But if you're a little bit more confident, you won't need to pin it. But what we're going to do is we're going to, just stitch all the way around with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So we're now coming up to the starting point where I started this row of stitching. So we're not going to come to this point, we're going to stop about 2 to 3 centimeters before, so you can leave a gap for you to thread your elastic through. Okay, so we're getting there. now it's time to add the elastic through this waist channel here. Now how much elastic you will need will depend on how heavy your fabric is, and also just personal preference on how kind of gathered or tight you would want it around your under bust area here. So what I would recommend doing is just getting your elastic and doing a rough measurement first around your body, and then adding more on just so that you have a little bit extra to play with. So I know I want mine quite loose, but not really loose. So I'm doing a rough estimate of what I think, like how I think I will want it to be, and then I'm just going to add maybe around 20 centimeters extra, just so I have a little bit extra to play with. And then what we're going to do with your safety pin from earlier, attach your safety pin onto the end. And again, like I said, if you didn't have a safety pin, you can use a Kirby grip, which I have lost now. No, it's here. And to use a Kirby grip like this, what you'll need to do is just make a very small hole in your elastic, and then you can just thread this through, and then it becomes the same thing, which is basically just a little strong piece on the end that's going to allow you to push it through the gap. So on your dress, find the hole that you left. Where is mine? Okay, here. And then what you're going to do is take your safety pin, put it in, and then just start threading. Just start pushing this through your channel. Actually, a good tip that I should tell you also is on the end of this elastic, just add something so that you don't end up pulling this inside the channel and then you can't get it back. So if you add like a pin or something that's going to make it hard for you to pull that in without realizing. So now we're just going to go all the way through with this and until it comes out the other side. Okay, now I've reached the point where my elastic has come back out the other side. So I'm just going to hold that and then just kind of like stretch it out a little bit. And then at this point now, so that you can make sure that you get this to the right tension that you want, the elastic, I recommend putting it on at this point, and then you can decide how you want to attack, like, what am I saying? You can decide then how much you need to cut these by. So I'll put it on now. Okay, sorry guys, I forgot to mention that it's easier to put the dress on inside out. So this is the inside out right now, because then that gives you easy access to this elastic that you threaded through. So this is how it's looking so far. I would like it a little bit more gathered, so I'm just going to play around pulling these until I'm happy. And then once you've got it to how you want it, then you can just mark it on these elastics. So I know it's around there. Ooh. It can be a little bit tricky, so you can get someone to help you if you've got anyone around. There we go. So now I know I can just cut that elastic there and then join it together. When you stitch your elastic together, do it in a zigzag stitch. And then once your elastic is in, then we can close this gap. Next up is our sleeves. So we're just going to take our sleeve and then fold them in half with the right sides of the fabric facing, and then just pin all the way down. And then stitch with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. And now we're going to overlock this seam allowance. So this sleeve has a little bit of gathering at the top, so we're going to do a row of gathering stitches. So to do that, put your machine on your longest stitch length, and then we're just between these notches, there's 3 notches, this one is your shoulder seam, but between this first notch and this final notch here, we're just going to do a row of stitching on the longest stitch length, and we're going to use that to allow us to pull gathers. So, and do this inside the seam allowance, so do it around 0.5 centimeters from the edge. Now we're going to add your sleeves. So to do this, I like to start with my body inside out, and then take a sleeve, and your sleeves have a small notch here. This means that this is to the right side, the front side of your fabric. This notch should be to the front side of your fabric. So I know, let me get this sleeve the right way around. So here's my notch, and this needs to be at the front. So I know that this sleeve needs to be on this side, because this is the front side. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this sleeve and I'm going to drop it through my armhole. So the sleeve's the right way around and your body is the wrong way around. And then at the underarm point, you can put the underarm points together, so the right sides of the fabric are facing. And then we're just going to pin that. And then I'm also going to pin my shoulder seam, which is the notch, the middle notch. So that's going to go against your shoulder seam. And then what you can do is just start pinning from your underarm point first. Until you reach that gathering stitch that you've done. And then when you get to this stitch here, all you need to do is pull this extra thread that's left on the end. You just need to pull one of these threads. It can be a little tricky to get it first of all. But if you pull this thread, it will help to create some gathers. And then that gives you the chance to shorten it to the right length, to gather it to the right length. And then we're just going to repeat for the other side. until you reach that gathering stitch again. And then we're going to pull one of the excess threads until it's gathered to the length of the sleeve, the shoulder, sorry. So once you've got that pinned all the way around, then you can just stitch around it with the 1 center seam allowance and then repeat for the other sleeve. So the next step is to overlock the armhole. And then we're also gonna overlock each cuff all the way around. Our second to final step is to add the elastic at the cuff. So to do this, we're going to turn the cuff up 1.5 centimeters. So if you're a beginner, you might want to go around and pin it all first, but if you're confident enough, then you can just go for it. So turn up 1.5 and then stitch all the way around, but leaving a small gap again like you did with the waistband so that we can add the elastic through. So now take your elastic again and you can measure this on your arm again, because again, this is just personal preference on how tight you would like it to be. I would like mine to be maybe around so. And then you can just cut 2 of these. So once I've got one, then I will just cut another one to match. And then using your safety pin again, we're going to attach it to your elastic, add something else to the other end that's going to allow you not to lose this end in the channel, because it's really annoying if you lose it and then you have to start again. So I'm going to add that there so it doesn't pull through. And then find your hole opening that you left and just use this safety pin to help you push the elastic through in the same way you did before. and then stitch. And then we can just close this gap again. And your final step is to finish your hem. So I have overlocked my hem, but if you want, you can fold twice. So you can fold 0.5 and then fold 1 centimeter. But I have overlocked mine, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold mine 1 centimeter. Sorry, 1.5 centimeters, and then I'm going to press it all the way around. And then finally, I'm going to stitch this and we're finished.